Hey guys, this is Mickey from Modern C10. I wanted to go over a couple of things on this bed while it's in this stage. You know, one of the things I get from people is that us charging $100 an hour is really a pretty low price. You know, there's a lot of shops out there charging 120 plus to do restoration type work and to do custom sheet metal work and you know, the fabrication, paint and body. One of the things I always reply with is, heck, if we charged more, I don't think anybody'd afford to be able to pay it, you know. But you got shops all over the place that are charging 120 plus that, you know, really talk about how we're just too cheap. Typically what I hear from customers, not this one, but what I usually hear from customers is that we're too expensive. So I wanted to go over some of those reasons right quick. And what you're looking at is a bed that's been metal worked. It's had a roll pan added to it. It's been mini tubbed with some 5-inch wide tubs. It's had a gas tank fuel door put in it and recessed. It's got some pockets for some tie downs. It's got a custom tailgate that we built that's been tubed and sleeved up there. We've extended fenders. I mean, there's been all kinds of metal work done on this bed to make it what it is, which is, you know, quite expensive already. But then we come to doing the actual sheet metal manipulation where we work all the dents out of it. Not all of them, but you know, you got to pick your battles with that. At some point, you know, you're going to put body filler on it anyway. So, you know, do you really want it perfectly flat and eat up 70, 120 hours or so and hammering and dollying? Or, you know, at some point you just got to call it good. So this is where we're at with this truck. We got it looking pretty good. Yeah, it's not perfect. You couldn't paint this. But like I said before, we're going to body work the whole thing and block it all anyways. But really what I wanted to bring up here was that whenever we strip one down, you know, this is getting into the hours and the money and all this stuff that you got in your projects. When we strip one down, it would be easy for us just to DA the outside, and that's all you're going to see. So we could DA that. We could come underneath here with some Scotch-Brite, just Scotch-Brite all of that stuff with some red Scotch-Brite, and then we could prime this whole thing, and customer would be none the wiser. And so if we charged $120, $140 an hour, and that's all we did to prep this bed and shot it in prime, you would feel like you're getting a pretty good deal, and I would actually make more money in the deal. But that's not how we do things here. You know, we're charging $100 an hour, which is cheap for our shop rate, but the time that we're putting into your project is so much more than what most shops are doing. And this ain't a dig at other shops. You know, everybody's got their way of doing things. But I know this stuff comes through my shop all the time. And very rarely do we see it all stripped down in here like how this one is. You know, the whole bed floor, all bare metal, all stripped down. Back behind the roll pan, every little nook and cranny everywhere. What you're seeing here, this black stuff, that's panel bond. That's where you know, we just didn't want any movement between, even though those fenders are bolted on, we just didn't want any movement between the fender and the bedside. So we also panel bonded it to keep it from being able to crack out around there. And we didn't want to weld it on there because that's a lot of welding and a whole lot more metal work for just no reason. So that's all you're seeing right there is panel bond. That needs to stay. But underneath the panel bond, it was prepped the same way before the fenders were put on. So, you know, up here in this bed floor, yeah, we could have easily just Scotch-Brited all that, shot some primer on it, and you'd never know any difference. But anyways, I want to make this video, go over, you know, what we do and why we have so much time in doing stuff like this, rather than other shops that could probably strip this bed and have it primed in 2 days. We're not all doing the same work, and keep that in mind when you're comparing hour for hour and shop rate, that even though at the end of the day they both got primer on them, they might not have went there in the same steps. And speaking of steps, so now that this thing is completely stripped down, it is actual bare metal. We also built I had the intern build this little fixture here to hold it in the rotisserie so that we can really flip it around and rotate it and get into everywhere. So, that's something else that takes time to do. But now the next step is to acid wash the whole thing. So we got these products down here, and what Trip will do is come in and he'll acid wash this whole thing top to bottom. And what that'll do is anywhere that there's been handprints or anywhere the guy's been working on it and touched it, even if it's just moving it into the booth, anywhere that moisture could be on the panel, this will neutralize any kind of rust or anything that is starting to happen. This thing was actually stripped yesterday. Believe it or not, in Oklahoma, with the humidity the way it is, overnight, this thing can flash rust. And, the whole thing can have it and you don't really see it. But yeah, I've came in before and it been completely red from flash rust. Not this particular bed, but I've had it happen in the past. So one of the things that we added to our steps is once we have it in bare metal, we use the metal prep down here, and that'll put, basically it'll neutralize this bed for a couple of days so that we have time to really get a good epoxy prime on it. And what you don't have happen is what we actually had this happen on this bed, where we would come in and start sanding this down and we would find rust everywhere, all inside here that was underneath the primer that was already on the truck. And what that typically is people just priming over the factory E-coat that comes on these panels. So we don't prime over the factory E-coat for many reasons. We strip it down to bare metal like this, at least 80 grit, and then we metal prep it and neutralize all the panels. And then we come back and epoxy it inside, outside, top, bottom, everything. We wouldn't come in and only epoxy the outside of the bed and then come back later on and have to mask that off and epoxy the inside of the bed. We try to be efficient and we try to do it all in stages. So this whole thing is stripped down, then the whole thing gets metal prepped, then the whole thing gets epoxied. Guys, not only do we film all of this for educational purposes and for content, but we also do it to document with the customer where we're at in the build. It would have been easy for us to just hide all of this metal work and hide the prep work that we did on it. It'd be easy for us just to hide it all, like I said before, and just put some primer, Scotch-Brite it and prime it, send them a picture of it in primer, and be like, hey, look, it's primed. And but we like to document our builds so that the customer really knows what he's getting. So when he gets that invoice every week that's got all those hours on it, it's justifiable because that we did the work. We didn't just say prep bed, prime bed, 90 hours. We wouldn't do something like that. Each week you'd be getting an invoice that's like stripped driver's side, bedside, 80 grit, stripped roll pin and tailgate, 80 grit, stripped passenger side, bedside, stripped bottom, inner fender. That's how we like to do our invoicing. So everything's documented, what stage your car's in, and you get to see the quality along the way rather than us just trying to, customer's coming, we got to make it look like we made some progress, shoot some primer on it. We don't do that. Here's a shot of what I was talking about with that surface rust. If you can see right in here, there's a handprint. That right there is surface rust. That'll absolutely come back and bite you. I don't know how well you can see it in the camera, but there is a handprint right here. Looks like that, where somebody touched that bedside. Guaranteed that's going to come back and bite you. There's another one right here. I can see it right in there. See if I can get the light right. And there's rust there. That is surface rust from a handprint. We try to wear gloves as much as possible, but every now and then it could be, your arm could rub up against it or something. But that's what we got this for. That's the last thing that happens before it gets epoxy prime. And yeah, I know, I see it every day on the forums. Every paint and body guy out there is the best there is. And everybody does it by the book and everybody's way is the right way. But But guys, we get a lot of stuff come through our shop. We're usually the last stop to fix things, and that went south. And the workload that comes through here says otherwise.